Hey guys, I'm gonna be fully transparent with you here. You know, I don't have to be, but I like to be. Well, sometimes I like to and then I regret it later, but whatever. The point is, there's something dirty going on in the games industry targeting small studios and indie developers. I have nodded to this in past videos, but I didn't focus on it as a topic. Today, I'd like to dive into it with you guys. So, long story short, so that the intro isn't super long, I was chilling in the bathroom the other day taking a shit when I saw this post by Varadark. Sorry if that's graphic, but again guys, I'm just trying to be fully transparent with you here, okay?
Oh, I'm just pooping, you know how I be.
The post references some of the most recent controversial events going on in gaming over the past few days, such as Larian's statement in regards to AI and how that was totally taken out of context by games media, and gazillions of people online crucifying the studio for nothing basically, followed by, out of nowhere, some ex-Larian developers making claims about harassment and fascists at the studio. We'll be taking a look at this in just a bit, don't worry. Then Sandfall Interactive's use of AI was also brought back up, and it's another nothing burger. It was just some placeholder images that they used during development to be later replaced by actual artwork. It didn't even make it to the launch version of the game, but it has already taken off into a whole other separate drama. And of course we also have the Lords of the Fallen 2 attractive character situation, which I've also covered a couple of days ago, but has gotten even worse with game news outlets now attacking the game and the studio the same way that they did with Black Myth Wukong, calling it a game made for the wrong people. And all of this right after indies and AA games dominated the Game Awards. Vara makes a snide comment about this being coordinated, and I believe she's right. It's just something that's been bugging me too over the past few days, and I'm glad to see that it's not just me. Sometimes I want to point some things out, but I feel like people will call me crazy or something, so I keep quiet, because holy hell guys, like there's even more stuff that I'm going to be adding to that list throughout this video. And also, the thing is, Indie and AA didn't even just dominate the awards this year, they dominated just the entire year in general. They outshined and embarrassed AAA. And people are really truly beginning to notice and spend their money more intelligently. This pretty much is signifying a big shift. It's a very beneficial thing for us as the ones buying and playing video games, but a bad one for the elites, you know, for lack of a better word, of the games industry. Like the actual industry, as in the big dogs, the major publishers, the game journalists, the big pushers of programs and initiatives that they employ, the nepotism hires and the activists that slip in uninvited and unproven. There's a status quo in the industry, a big club if you will, and we are not in it. This shift isn't good for that big club. As such, we've seen pushback against it the entire year, and we will be seeing even more of it going forward, I suspect. So please stick around for the rest of the video. We're going to be checking out some important things, recapping some big lies that were exposed, and discussing what the future of the medium looks like, all with full transparency. Okay, maybe a bit less transparency. I'm sorry guys, what do you want from me? I was playing Tomb Raider and I just had to go because I had kebab for dinner earlier, and you can ask Discuss Thing and the 40k Empress, they actually know this for a fact. And I don't know, you know, maybe something went sideways.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay?
I already talked about the AI situation in a full-length video. It's likely the last time that I'll explore it at length. In general, I think most people just don't care at all. They just want the games to be good and that's about it. But regardless, the video is there. If anyone is interested, you're free to check it out. In short, there's various ways that it can be used where it's not invasive nor replacing artists, but actually being of help to them and their work if they choose to use it. This is how Larian has been exploring it. They're not generating anything or replacing workers, and that's all that matters. And it was the same with Expedition 33. They had some placeholder images that didn't even make it to the finished version of the game. It's an even bigger nothing burger than the Larian situation, and yet here we are undergoing a major clown show where now people are putting into question all of the awards that they won during the, the sweep over at the Game Awards, the Joystick Awards, etc. At the end of the day, I think that all most people care about, myself included, is that the game turns out amazing and AI isn't used to, slopify video games. Everything else can eat my entire ass.
the whole thing.
So all this fake outrage generated by both Larian and Sandfall, by games media who are now also trying to question the legitimacy of the awards, labeling fans of Lords of the Fallen as the wrong kind of fans, like all of this is just tiresome. It reeks of bitching, it's pathetic, you know, it's basically candy-ass territory and people are sick and tired of dealing with it, okay? If I was an AI hater, I wouldn't even be going at it this route, like I wouldn't be legitimizing Expedition 33 as a game that was made by AI use, okay? That's terrible marketing for anti-AI people, because it's like, hey, look at this awful game that people used AI to make. Like, no. You don't want to go down this avenue. You don't want to associate these two things. Now, let's rapid fire over to these new allegations that kind of just popped up out of nowhere, feature no evidence whatsoever, and are being thrown in to add more weight and controversy to Larian's name off the back of the AI problem. Obviously, from my tone, you already know that I'm finding all of this very suspicious, but let's check the claims out first. Remember, we're all about transparency here, guys. Larian Studios has suddenly been bombarded with accusations from former employees and writers who have collectively begun sharing on their Blue Sky social media pages harrowing stories of sexual harassment, tolerance of openly fascist views within the team, and exploitative hiring practices for narrative positions. Okay, so let me see if I got this right. We got a group of yahoos on Blue Sky who have AI derangement syndrome and who unironically use the word fascist, and who also provided zero evidence whatsoever of their claims. I don't know, fellas, I don't want to be unfair here. After all, I am the pinnacle of professionalism on YouTube. But, yeah, no, this is starting to look like a bunch of blue hair Karen copium. Let's continue, though. A certain Hash Bandicoot, who allegedly worked at Larian, stated that the studio's management ignored complaints about a colleague who became radicalized during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to him, the employee openly watched Tim Pool's videos in the office, discussed cultural Marxism, and formed a small group of like-minded individuals with far-right views. Ah, yes, of course, everyone who disagrees with me is far-right. Brilliant. Honestly, these accusations here have only gone to expose just how insanely rotten and poisoned so many studios are. I use various examples of this kind of thing in my videos when I talk about how deeply entrenched ideological activists are in the games industry. It's not enough to, you know, go through a few small changes in the studio. It's not enough that a game can flop or whatever. It's not even enough that you can have layoffs, because sometimes these people end up employed at other studios. The main point is that big change is necessary in order for these bigger studios to stop focusing on the wrong things while making their games. But a thing that critics of mine like to throw at me to discredit it is say that my examples mean nothing and are only hypothetical, you know, like anecdotal examples. I usually give individual examples, for instance, the Ubisoft HR thing, where they took action against exclamation marks in emails because some maladjusted jellyfish found them to be aggressive and hostile. This is the culture within Ubisoft, it is what it is. Or for instance, the filth going on at GDC, where they very blatantly make presentations with the intent to teach and indoctrinate game developers on how to make their games purposefully political, to use them for activism. And others too, like I may not bring up every example all the time, but there's CD Projekt Red's nutcases, Xbox Game Studios nutcases, which range between like 3 or 4 separate studios at this point, this whole list of restrictions that they use to influence their games, etc. Like, there's a lot. I have an entire multi-folder set of saved up evidence of this kind of shit. But some people dismiss these examples as not actually representative of what's going on in general in these studios. But every damn time something like this comes up, it just carries on confirming what we already know, that this industry is ingrained with this ideology, to the point where anyone at all that dares to be out as a conservative or Republican voter, or just simply question far-left bullshit, which is pretty much anyone, even centrists, they will immediately stand out like a sore thumb and get shunned and attempted to get fired by soy boys like these, even if it's something that isn't inherently political, but that goes against political correctness, like the poor sods at Ubisoft, who have to have their language monitored and moderated. I bet they'd have the same meltdown if the developers were listening to the Joe Rogan podcast or some shit. I mean, who am I kidding? The Baldur's Gate 3 community completely shunned a voice actor, Fraser Blaxland, causing him to be completely cast out by the community and other voice actors like Neil Newbaum and everyone's new favorite voice actress, Jennifer English, because he fucking followed Joe Rogan on Twitter and held right-wing beliefs.
We put like a monetary value on actual life itself. Wow, it's just such a strange concept.
Yeah.
Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car?
No.
Holy shit, Jamie, pull that video.
Beliefs he didn't really push on anyone, by the way. Like, these people had to go and dig through this man's profile, to go through the likes and the shares, just to find shit to get mad at. Like, this is mentally unhinged, and Larian did the right thing to not fire the other devs over nothing. Let's continue though. Several employees allegedly approached Sven Vinka asking him to intervene, pointing out that the colleague's behavior was creating discomfort and contradicted the team's values. However, the head of Larian did nothing, calling him irreplaceable. This allegedly led to a toxic atmosphere, especially for marginalized workers. Oh, shut the f*** up. You're a game developer working at a bang-up studio with locations across major cities like Barcelona, Quebec, Dublin, Ghent, etc., developing one of the most anticipated games at the time. You're not marginalized, we're not in the 1600s, and you're not living a life oppressed by an enemy tribe out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. You got mad because there were developers in the studio whom you had political disagreements with, and like the actual oppressive authoritarian assholes that you have been for over a decade now towards anyone that doesn't lick your you tried to get them fired. There you go, guys. These are the big allegations of abuse in the studio of Larian. A few maladjusted morons who can't get along and coexist with people whom they have political disagreements with. And the rest of the shit in this article is stupid too, guys. It's about people complaining about the studio requiring them to write test scripts as an application to get a narrative-related job at the studio. So basically, these people are so used to just showing up somewhere and saying, I'm a marginalized minority, and be given special treatment and benefits that they've completely lost touch with reality. Like, you're not applying at Timmy's Garage Studio, you're applying for Larian, makers of critically acclaimed RPGs. What the fuck do you expect? No quality control? You just let in any moron who drops a CV?
Got a pencil? Get the fuck in there, it's physics.
It feels like these people have forgotten that making video games is, first of all, not really a privilege, it's a job, and it requires actually talented people. It should above all else be a merit-based position, because if you want to make quality games, you need people with skill. And in order to measure that talent and that skill and that merit, you need to apply. You gotta go to interviews, you gotta show the quality of your work. All of which are the things that these retards are coping about in Blue Sky. One of them, Kat Manning, even goes as far as to say that the studio forced people into thousands of hours, guys. Thousands of unpaid work. And by the way, one of the accusers here is Zoe Quinn. Yes, the same Zoe Quinn who accused Canadian developer and composer Alec Holoka of harassment, causing him to lose everything, his friends, his colleagues, the game that he was working on, etc. Plus getting harassed by mobs online, ultimately leading to him taking his own life. And the rich part? None of these accusations had any evidence presented at all either. So frankly, all of these people can also go ahead and...
they can eat my entire ass.
Indeed, the whole thing. This alone exposes just how bad hiring has gotten in the industry. You're not even expected to goddamn work for it. You're supposed to just show up, present your social media bio, and bam, you're in. Is it even a wonder why AAA has been getting so boned with decaying quality year after year? doesn't really come as a surprise to me. In fact, it explains a lot, honestly. There's so many times where there's these major fuck-ups in video games and you just wonder to yourself, how could this happen? How could they let this happen? Was it time constraints? Was it the budget? I mean, it doesn't look like it. It just looks like the game is bad, but God, I wonder what happened. Well, there you go, fellas. That's what happened. But there's not... Nope, that's what happened. Is it a wonder why Larian still managed to do a good job with Baldur's Gate 3, barring a few things that people noted negatively, such as the third act? This is what more studios need to do. Stop listening to these Karens, stop listening to game journalists and consultants and all those other sorts, and just focus on your work. Let them go on their Blue Sky accounts and farm outrage under your name, making false claims and moaning endlessly about you. It doesn't matter. Nobody even takes Blue Sky seriously anyway. It's a fucking cesspit. Also, excuse me, just one last remark. You're saying that you had all of these extremely serious accusations of literal physical abuse, which, by the way, I didn't even see the claim for, but whatever. Fascistas in the studio, like I don't know how that even applies, I have no idea. And, actual violations of workers' rights with thousands of hours of unpaid work, and you said nothing all these years? You just sat around seething, and now that they got into trouble over an AI story, you collectively decide to come out with these ridiculous stories that bog down to Larian not firing someone who did literally nothing wrong and requiring interviews, processes, and trials to make sure that they hire the right people for the games that they're making. I'm sorry, I got a question. You know what, I'll let Norm MacDonald ask it himself.
What, are you retarded? So I know you're not retarded, but what are you, Down syndrome?
Since I already covered the Lords of the Fallen 2 thing at length in another video and talked about these people's unhealthy obsession with making ugly female characters, I'm going to go ahead and skip it so we don't take even longer on this video, and that would mean that we are at the end of Varadark's list. But there's more! We gotta talk about how game news outlets are going full Corpo Defense Force lately. Way earlier in the year, Xbox came out and put their balls on the table and said, we're gonna be selling our amazing ass-tastic quadruple-A first-party Xbox PC games at $80. Maybe I'm paraphrasing a word or two, but you get the point. If you'll recall, this didn't even start with Xbox. It was Nintendo first, but that's not what this story is about. The point is that people were worried that this would become a new trend and it would normalize the $80 price tag the same way that the $70 price tag was normalized a few years ago. Thankfully, this standardization of $80 games didn't happen yet, with the only company openly coming out and doing it being Xbox, which didn't look good and garnered even more backlash, deservedly so due to their failing reputation of late. But a publisher that was seemingly interested in doing it too was 2K with Borderlands 4. Randy Pitchford was foaming at the mouth, thinking of all the granola he'd make with an $80 asking price, and of course, when all of us stood together to fight this back, make noise on social media, go over to Randy Pitchford's fucking, tweets and go and tell him to eat a bag of pickles. The media ridiculed us and took the prick's side, and then they ridiculed us some more when ultimately they announced that the game would be $70 instead. This for me was a real mask-off moment because, it's such an easy win. We may disagree on ideological matters, but when it comes to game prices, it should just be such an easy win for game news media to stand with the gamers and, advocate for not increasing game prices, but they're not even doing that anymore. Also, we can't forget a big one that I've been tangled up in since the start of the year, which is games media going out of their way to pass off bad games as big hits. This didn't just start with Shadows. Earlier than that, we saw it happen with Avowed. They generally tried to pass this game off as a huge success using estimation numbers and painting them in the best light possible, even though it made zero sense. I'll leave any relevant links to these videos down below if you want to go back in time for a little bit. Feel free to leave a comment if you do, I still get notifications from older videos. Then was the Shadows case, and it was a big one. Games media was desperate to make this game look like a success, and in this case here it even involves far more dubious things that I think we'll be seeing again and again throughout the next year, which is games industry analysts allegedly having their own biases, which they put on display when trying to take analytical data and framing it in as positive a light as possible to make struggling games look like they are making big numbers. This has already been happening since 2024 and I didn't even notice it at the time. I only became aware of it now recently when I was covering the Ghost of Yote situation. They did it with games like Dragon Age Veilguard, Star Wars Outlaws, I think that's the name of it, the one from Ubisoft. This year we had Shadows and Yote, and I don't think it's going to stop there. I think these companies understand that if your game looks like a winner, it's going to win some more, and if your game looks like a loser, it's going to lose some more. These people, they understand this kind of dynamic, and so if they can try to manufacture a positive reaction to the game initially, they're going to do it. What they do is they literally frame it, as in finding the best possible angle for the numbers to tell the best possible story about the games that they're pushing. This was made as clear as day when Assassin's Creed Shadows was said to be the best selling of the game for this? Sorry, the best-selling game of 2025, out of all new releases. The thing about this that bothers me the most is that it generates sensational titles like this, allowing big gaming news outlets to push out blatant lies in bold letters across their thumbnails, thus ending up giving normies and potentially even investors a false sense of a game's actual performance. Shadows wasn't anywhere near the best-selling game of 2025. It doesn't even have sales data out. Ubisoft have been coping with player numbers since launch, and most recently they even had a new cope where they counted fucking player sessions to try and put out an even bigger number in their headlines. Player sessions, man, that's like when someone launches the game. All of this stuff is ridiculous and it's all a big false game that I despise, but one thing I do find amusing is how they expose themselves while doing so, because later, while we were going through the big Ghost of Yote cope, or Yotai, I still don't know how to say it, I'm playing it by the way guys, I'm going to be having a in-depth review of the game sooner or later. That's pretty much all that I can say. You know, I got the game, been playing it, and I had to take a break because it's pretty goddamn tedious, I'm not gonna lie to you. All this scope that went down about the game's quality, or not the quality, about the game's sales, I don't even understand what was all that fixation for, because the game has been painfully average. Sometimes there's spikes, but for the most part, it leaves a lot to be desired. But anyway, back to the main point. So during the whole Ghost of Yote cope, which has been one of my favorite ones as well, because basically, a couple of years ago, Final Fantasy 16 came out, it sold 3 million copies in 1 week, and people were like, well, this is a flop, you know, Final Fantasy is dead, Square Enix needs to pack it up and stop doing exclusives, blah 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 blah. And now, fast forward to 2025, we have 3 million sales in a whole month, and it's supposedly a great big success. So, yeah, fellas, I don't know who the fuck is doing this math, but it ain't hitting. But anyway, I almost got derailed again, I'm sorry, let's get back to it. So they released this picture that ranked the games based on their sales revenue this year. And this was done to show how successful Yotai was, because it had only been out for a few days and was already in the top 20. What they failed to take into account was to make a little space for Assassin's Creed Shadows by finding a different way to frame these numbers where the game was included on the list as well, in order to make it make sense with previous claims throughout the year of the game being a massive hit. Again, this is all a game of framing and filtering. The data released in the summer painting Shadows as the biggest hit of the year was so incredibly skewed and manipulated that it placed it ahead of Monster Hunter Wilds, a game that sold 10 million copies. This alone was big enough of a red flag to call out the lie. After all, at the time, Ubisoft hadn't even announced 10 million players, they only had 5. And players don't even count as full sales. So I can only imagine how filtered that shit was. And please, understand that when I say manipulated or filtered, I don't mean that they're faking the data. What I mean is that they are reporting the real data but filtered in whatever way they need to tell the stories that they're inclined to tell. In other words, it's like makeup, Photoshop, and a nice angle for a selfie. They supposedly have the numbers, but they never release them. The cope is, well, it's our business, we can't just give it away. Game journalists will still defend them as the industry standard that was trusted for years. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like that, you know. If anything, that just gives me reason to not trust them. I mean, why would I trust the industry standard that works directly with these publishers? And why would an industry standard be inherently trustworthy? Game journalists' websites are still the industry standard for the news and even for reviews. I mean, you watch all these post-launch trailers and what do you guys see? The review ratings from these lying-ass gaming news outlets. If I don't trust them, after them proving themselves liars for years now, why would I trust tools like Matt Piscatella and all of these ambiguously presented data points of theirs? I don't think so. I'd rather do my own research, and yeah, maybe sometimes I'll get it wrong, but at least I'm not deliberately bullshitting people. Another angle of the Corpo Defense Force is stuff I brought up in my critiques to the Game Awards and how they neglected loads of fantastic games this year, ending up with disgraceful variety. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Expedition 33 was going to win anyway. Receiving nominations in and of itself is something developers and publishers value, and it's also publicity. The Game Awards is an elite show for elites only, that's how it feels. It is composed of game news outlets as judges and juries, which hold 90% of the voting power, and who also pull a lot of weight when it comes to nominations. So basically, we have people who classically are known for not playing video games and for having shit takes on the games that they do play, ahead of nominating which games are going to be, you know, worthy of making it to the show, and which games are going to be worthy of the victories themselves. Jeff Keighley's intentions are difficult to pinpoint. I confess that I don't hate the guy, but I do hate what the show represents, and the only thing about it that I find worthwhile is the trailers. Because the awards component is basically like, let me tell you how I felt this year, as an example. And by the way, this is a year where a lot of people seem to have enjoyed the show more than before, but basically, my experience 80% of the time was watching a new category go up on screen, where the games that I've actually enjoyed most throughout the year were not present.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
And where we just see the same 5 or 6 games just spread out across all the categories. The Game Awards just doesn't celebrate games anymore, it just keeps the status quo going. Sometimes you'll get good moments and deserving winners, of course, but underneath the flowers, it's not a show by gamers for gamers, it's by the industry for the industry. And other award things are even worse, like the golden joysticks and dice. They have become places for all the people that hate you, and me of course, to congregate, offer each other awards for another successful year of, you know, fucking up the games industry, you know, do a little bit of networking, sip a few cocktails, and then go home. And in order for them to be able to keep doing this, they need that status quo to continue. That's why during the DICE Awards earlier this year, they groaned when the presenters made a joke about how little time Concord lasted in the market, and then cheered when the presenters did a little stern call out to executives who keep firing developers. But they don't want to have the real conversation about these layoffs and how some of them are not only perfectly warranted, but they are straight up necessary for the survival of these big name studios that have spent the last 5 to 6 years packing themselves up with useless, politically brain-rotted, talentless hires during the big ESG boom, only to realize now, years later, that those ESG dollars aren't enough to make up for the mass losses in revenue from people refusing to buy the sorry excuses for the games that they now make under these weak hires and political correctness departments. I won't call them DEI hires because I don't know whether or not they are, like I don't have proof of each individual case, you know, but obviously we do have proof that they exist because these companies love nothing more than to plaster their DEI initiative pages all over their websites. And I'm not going to lie guys, you know, some of the points that they make do make sense. There are CEOs out there raking in millions and millions and millions of dollars in bonuses while at the same time undergoing layoffs. this kind of shit, let's be honest, it exists only to enrich those assholes at the top, because this is a problem. You can have the perfect team that made the perfect game, and some asshole higher up is going to look at the game, is going to look at the team, the team's going to bring in some money, he's going to have a nice little bonus laid out for the end of the quarter, the financial quarter, and the son of a bitch is still going to go ahead and dismantle your team who worked so perfectly together, because hey, fuck you, there's too many devs and it's time for some layoffs, so that the company's financials look even better. This is a problem, but you know what else is a problem? Basically, no layoffs should ever happen, because these guys up top are very rich, and so their money should sustain the team's failures. And now I'm talking about failures, because that's when the problems happen, because over the past few years, stories of success have been rarer and rarer. What we do see is a lot of stories of failure, and then the layoffs happen for actual good reasons this time. If you fail at selling a game, of course you're going to get layoffs. I mean, what do you expect? A fucking lottery ticket? And these developers feel entitled to their positions. It's, again, the whole Larian thing that we just talked about a few minutes ago. You're not entitled to being a game developer. You're not entitled to a position in this industry, especially in these big studios. You're either worth it or you're not. And if you're not, you should get out, because otherwise, company is just going to keep sinking. I think that the more people poke and prod at this, wasp's nest of bullshit interned in the industry, the more aggressive it's going to become and the more it's going to try to fight back. I think that's what's happening right now with these stories and many, many more that we've seen throughout the year, and I suspect it's what's going to keep happening throughout the next one. A continuous media-backed push against the progress we've made, with more jabs at developers or CEOs who use attractive, appealing character designs as a marketing point, and straight-up hit pieces against anyone who makes games that don't suit their narrow-minded agendas, or against us, the very players interested in those games, describing us as the wrong kind of people. Sorry for the bit of a voice switch here, guys. I'm recording this part the next day. I've been feeling kinda sick, so, it is what it is. The domination of indie games and smaller scale AA games this year was insane. It even feels like it was right there from the start. Now, I may forget some games, so feel free to add more in the comments, but right from the beginning of the year, we had some noteworthy games in this realm getting a lot of recognition and in some cases even outselling AAA games. February saw the release of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Now, I know the game isn't everyone's cup of tea and the studio is much bigger now than it was back in 2018 with the first game, but it's still considered AA with a really low budget for the massive scale of the game. Soon after that, we got Schedule 1. A game from one developer which literally performed better than Assassin's Creed, at least on PC, and of course, fair enough, because Schedule 1 is only available on PC. Be careful with those copycats over on PlayStation and etc. There's a lot of people making games calling them Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 or copying the art style and the image and calling them Drug Dealer Simulator. Careful with that shit. We also got Split Fiction around this time and Atomfall. Atomfall being a huge highlight of mine this year. In April we got, of course, Expedition 33, which needs no introduction whatsoever. It shattered all the lies that AAA keeps telling us about making games like these. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, we need to expand more. Oh, we need to charge $80, otherwise it's not sustainable. All a bunch of bullshit from a broken industry. Even if Expedition 33 is not your cup of tea in terms of the gameplay, the turn-based stuff, the structure of the game, etc., it's still worth celebrating for this reason alone. Another small indie game also came out around this time called Blueprints. I didn't play it, but it was very talked about. And in May, we also got The Precinct, which, to be fair, was not very talked about, but you guys should definitely give it a go. It's a great game. But also, Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon, which is another big highlight of mine and actually did get quite a bit of traction, and would have gotten even more if the game was not in such a messy state. I really hope these developers take this thing into account, because they are clearly very talented. They clearly have their heads in the right place, it's just that they need to focus on releasing a product that is polished. In June, we saw The Altars and Peak, two major games that stood out too, especially Peak. I never played it, but so many people praised the fun that they had. Later on, we got Wu Chang, which was a solid Souls-like game with a twist, also from a small, relatively new Chinese studio. And I guess speaking of this, I should also mention Kazan. Kazan is a fantastic game, man. It's probably my favorite Souls-like release of the year. It's published by PlayStation, but it's yet another one of those lesser-known Korean studios trying to make a name for themselves, like Shift Up last year with Stellar Blade. And also, since we're talking about Korean studios and Souls-likes, I would be a dick if I didn't mention the Lies of P expansion as well. Later in September, we had some real bangers, man, I'm not gonna lie. Silk Song came out, which pissed off a lot of developers, even indie ones, because it released very suddenly and at $20, but that's a whole other story. We also got Hell Is Us, which I am going to glaze the shit out of one of these days, and Chronos The New Dawn, which I've been playing and enjoying the past few days. Although, not as much as Hell Is Us though. I definitely watched the price on Chronos. It's basically a Dead Space-like. I know this sounds stupid to say, but it is what it is. It kind of plays like that game, just kind of like how Callisto Protocol was also a Dead Space-like, but so far, it lacks the satisfying feeling of the combat that Dead Space had. That whole system of cutting limbs off with your shots. I tried doing it with the first couple of enemies by charge shooting their appendages, but it just didn't work, so basically I'm going for headshots all the time now, and it's just not as satisfying. I'm wondering if the new weapon unlocks will spice up the gameplay soon. It could really need it. Otherwise, it's still not a bad game. Like, I love the damn lore of the world, for example. Presentation looks fantastic too, so it's not a bad game, just means that it doesn't rise as high as it could have if it did work on more satisfying combat. But anyway, where was I? Silk Song is indie, but Hell Is Us and Chronos are AA, and this is the stuff that I want to see more of. Also, I think the Nightling released around this time too. Shout out to the Nightling. It's a very fun indie game, just sadly not that popular. October had Dispatch and Ball Pit also make a name for themselves, and of course who could forget Arc Raiders as well. I would also reluctantly add that bodycam shooter, Ready or Not, right? Even though I didn't like seeing the developers cave to pressure to change content in it. Regardless, it is still another case of success from these smaller studios doing what the major publishers, I don't know, just don't have the capacity to create. Like, I don't know, it's like they're spent. Their ideas have all run out, and all they can do is rehash. And I guess I'll stop it here for now. Indies and AA have been leading discourse in 2025, and that's the main point to take away from here. And it's kind of surreal in a way. It's not that we didn't have big AAA hits regardless, we did, but we had less of them. And major names ended up either quickly forgotten or buried when it comes to the discourse, when it comes to what people want to see more of, when it comes to what excited the public. And it kind of feels like the stage is set for it to dominate discourse again next year. Indie and AA are on the spotlight. For example, my favorite upcoming game, the one that I'm most excited for, is Dawnwalker from Rebel Wolves. And I've seen it on other people's most anticipated lists too. And also, something I noticed every now and then was, out of nowhere, it was very normal to see a random indie game go mini viral. Not full viral, but at least mini viral on X over the past few months, garnering some new support and some new purchases. And this honestly wasn't something I was expecting at the closing of last year. I'm very happy and hopeful for smaller studios out there, and very proud of everyone actually getting out there and being smarter with their money, checking out alternatives. We do a lot of roasting here on this channel. We dive into tough topics to, talk about. We do a lot of criticism of major fumbles, but genuinely, there is still so much good stuff out there to look forward to and play. It's just that the industry doesn't highlight them. They prefer to keep glazing their inner circle over at the big club, and then lying to us, trying to convince us that mediocre games that keep falling in popularity despite gaming in general growing exponentially are actually major hits, guys. For as long as that happens, you can count on me to push back and hopefully guide some of you to some better purchases, both new ones and old ones that have been lost to time, waiting to be rediscovered. I do hope that 2026 is the year of AA though. I sadly still see too many great AA projects going under the radar. In a way, indies manage to have even more exposure. Of course not all of them do, most indie games are stuck on the bottom of some Steam list somewhere, but surely you understand what I mean. When a quality indie game pops up, it has the ability to fly, even though it could fly even further with the help of the industry, but it is what it is. But at least word of mouth does usually take them to great lengths. But when great AA games like Hell Is Us or Atomfall pop up, they kind of come and go without much noise. They live in a zone where expectations are higher, it's harder to impress, and the reach is still much smaller. Reviews end up being harsher because, well, at the same time, price points are also higher, usually around $50 to $60 range, and yeah. They're kind of like the middle child of the games industry. We're too busy scolding the older AAA child and pampering the younger indie child. Meanwhile, nobody gives a shit about the middle one. So I hope they'll be less neglected going forward, because this is the future, guys. Small studios become AA studios, and then AA studios grow, expand, and eventually reach that new AAA studio state. But in the good way, not in the modern way, which means that in general a studio is about to corporatize itself and make worse games at higher budgets. Independence is very important. Why is Lords of the Fallen 2 being attacked? Easy, because they're not bound by the rules and expectations of the big elite clown club. So instead of making a bald female protagonist that looks like a dude, they make attractive characters a selling point. And this shit is why they hate AA and indie. They have independence, they're not driven by the same grants and investments and shit that come with these ESG demands. They can't be controlled by that arm of the industry. And that's why there's such a big threat to them right now. If you're spending money on them, as in the smaller AA studios, there's less money to go around for the big dogs on top who are desperate for it because their budgets are inflated to kingdom fuck. Also, unlike 10-15 years ago, there's more independent and smaller studios now. It's a great time to be a gamer in a way because we have more variety, even if the Western AAA scene is disappointing, failing to make games as good as they used to back then. But yeah, it's a bad time to be a studio because of how much competition there is. And while independence is great in that way, it's also a double-edged sword. There's less safety nets for mistakes and failures and far less exposure and awards for their efforts. This is why it's up to us to make up for it. I hope we'll see more of it, and I'll also try to put my money where my mouth is and cover more games too. I just get caught up a lot and don't often have the time to do so more freely, but I'll try. So here's the 2026 and what'll hopefully be the year of AA. But most of all, a good year with great games and no BS. Thank you very much for watching. Let's up those numbers, like the video if you enjoyed my ramblings, subscribe, stay tuned, and let's keep crushing this status quo. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.